Hello everyone, I'm Miss Ha from One Paper Studio. Today I'm going to talk about the law of index. And you may have the question, what does it mean by index? So what does it mean by index? So index is the new way for we to do the calculations easier. Like the thing that we learned before, if we want to add the thing together like 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, you don't want to write it down for many times, you don't want to write so many 3 here, you can simplify your calculation to make it 3 times 4, which means that 3 is repeated for 4 times. And how can we use index? So when we do the multiplications, do the repeated multiplication for many times, we can use index to simplify our calculation, simplify our steps. So how can we write it down like, I want to do this calculation 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, and I don't want to write down 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 for so many times. So how can I simplify my way? I can write it down is to be 3 to the power of 4. In this situation, 3 we call it base, which means that this number is repeated for many times. And how many 3 are repeated? We can see there is a 4. We call it index. We saw that 3 is repeated, it times itself for 4 times. So we can write down 3 to the power of 4. So this is the way that how we use the index. In the index, we also have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and the division part. But it definitely a little bit different from the original operation that we learned. So what operation you saw in the original operation? It should be like this. So what does the means of the additions in the index? You can take the above one as one of the example. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 can be written down as 3 to the power of 1, because there's only one 3 here, times 3 to the power of 1 times 3, 1 times 3, 1. Which means that we have 4 3 times itself together, So there is a 3. If you see there's a multiplication in the original operation you saw here, when it changed to the index, it would become the addition, which means that 3 to the power of 1 and then plus also 1 plus 1 plus 1. And you can get your answer, there's a 3 to the power of 4. So when the question is asking you, and when you see the base time itself for many times, and then you can just make the additions in the index column, and then you can find the answer. That's how the way that we use the addition. You can just, so we can just write it down here. There's a 3 1 times 3 1 times 3 1 times 3 1, which means that 3 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and then there's a 3 to the power of 4. That's the way that we use the addition. And how can we use the subtraction parts? Subtractions, if you use the subtraction part here, it actually, the subtraction in the index part represents the original division part. It's just like 3 to the power of 1 times 3 to the power of 1 times 3 to the power of 1 divided by 3 to the power of 1. When you saw this question before, you may simply just eliminate the number like this 2, eliminate it directly, because times 3 divided by 3 this one can become 1. And then you can write down, oh, the answer here should be 3 to the power of 1 times 3 to the power of 1, which is 3, 1 plus 1 equal to 3 to the power of 2. But if we don't want to simplify the question, we want to make it changes to the operation in the index part. How can we make it? So we will do it like this. Three to the power of 1, and then you can see that there's a time it together. So it should be 3, 1 plus 1 plus 1. And then divided by 3. The division in the original operations represents the subtractions in the index part. So we just write down subtract 1 here, minus 1. And then you can find the answer. 3, the base won't change because the time itself, there's a 3 here, time itself here. And the index part here, 1 plus 1 plus 1 minus 1 represents equals 2. So in this question, you also can get it as a 3 to the power of 2. If you didn't eliminate anything, you just do the operation in the index part. So every time that you can see the divisions, you can see the division represents the subtraction in the index part, which is here. And how about the next part? How about the multiplication size? So in this part, the multiplication side represents the brackets in the original operation. Like if it is 3 to the power of 2, and then I make the bracket here, and to the power of 3. In this case, the answer should be 3 2 times 3. And then you can get the answer is 3 to the power of 6. And you may think, why the answer should be like this? Why it should be multiplications? So I can just make a simple explanation to you. You can think of inside the brackets, we make it like an apple. Which means that here is apple to the power of 3, which means that it should be apple, and then it time itself for 3 times. Yeah, there's a apple time apple time apple, and then you know that apple is 3 to the power of 2. So you can just write down it's a 3 to the power of 2, and then times 3 to the power of 2 times 3 to the power of 2. So there's a multiplication here, so it will change to the addition in the index part. It will become 3 to the power of 2 plus 2 plus 2. And then you also can find the answer, there's a 3 to the power of 6. So every time that you can see the bracket here, you just simply change it to the multiplication size, and then you can find out the answer. They actually is the same. The reason why we use the bracket is we just want to simplify our steps. We don't want to repeat it for many times, so that's why we use the bracket here. And the last one is the division size. So how can what operation in the normal part will become the divisions in the index? It will be talking about the roots, like the root of 3 to the power of 4. This one will be equal to 3, 4 divided by 2. And then you can find out the answer, there is a 3 to the power of 2. So why it is divided by 2? Because if it is the root of it, there's a nothing here, and then it will represent 2. Alright, it will have the small 2 here, but in the root here, you don't want to write it down because 2 is the general part here. You don't need to write down 2 here. So every time you see the root here, you can think of there's a 4, and then divided by 2. So you write it down in the index part, there's a 3 to the power of 4 divided by 2. And you can find out the answer is a 3, 2. And you may ask, why it should be like this. Alright, why it should be like the divided by 2. If you don't use this method, if you use the method that you learned before, 3 to the power of 4 and then the root of it is equal to 3 to the power of 2 times 2. We know that from the times here, we can change this back to the bracket like we just learned before. It will become 3, 2, and then bracket 2, and then find out the root of it. And for this time, if you see the 2 and the root here, you actually can simplify the answer. And then you can find out the answer here is 3 to the power of 2, which is also the same for the thing that we just taught here. Alright, so this is the end of the law of index part. So if you have any question, feel free to ask me in the comments. And that's the end of today's part.